We all go through things inside of our life. Some are more grand schemes, some are a lot smaller. But at the end of the day, how we accept those difficulties and how we accept those trials inside of our life is going to determine our entire outlook, how much we can accomplish, who we're going to be, what kind of person we want the world to see us as. And if we can take aside all these hardships and say, no matter what God is throwing at me today, no matter what lesson he wants me to learn right now, I'm going to step back. I'm going to get over myself and recognize that it's not the end of the world. And it's very difficult. There's definitely situations where it feels like that. But if you can just step back and say, you know what? It's not all about me 24/7. I could step back, recognize it's going to be okay, and get over myself.
What if the truth came in a gel cap and we could just pop it in our mouths and forget about it? Well, it doesn't, and we can't. But we can laugh in the face of reality while plotting our survival. Welcome to the Truth Tastes Funny podcast. I am your host, Hirsch Redpun, and if my guests can handle the truth, so can you. Open wide, folks. Here it comes. With me on Truth Tastes Funny today is Brandon Davis. Brandon's a young CEO, and we will talk about what his business model is, because it's pretty interesting, and he also operates Get Over Yourself, which is a podcast platform dedicated to helping young adults destroy their self-limitations and grow outside their comfort zones in business and in life. Brandon, first of all, welcome to Truth Tastes Funny.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's kind of fun. Your podcast here. It's a mixture of business and life pleasure and the chaos of the world. I feel like it's a platform where you could just kind of be open and honest, which you don't see a lot of these days. So congrats to you.
Thank you, man. And yes, absolutely. And in fact, we had previously just discussed when we were talking about doing this interview, we discussed, starting a business in today's world. Like I talk on the show about thriving and surviving, or surviving and then thriving rather, but I love to get your perspective on, let's start with starting a business in this day and age.
Yeah. So there's a lot of different formats. There's a lot of different factors. You'll listen to somebody on YouTube. You'll meet somebody down the street. You'll have a friend who started their business. Everyone is going to be doing it in a different way, shape, or form. And that's just the reality matter. That's been since the dawning of time. That's how it's been. I'm pretty young, as you mentioned, as you're kind of telling the audience a little bit about me. My co-founder, he's young as well. So we definitely have a different take on business than some of these tenured CEOs who have been in the business world for the past 40, 50 years. What I believe makes us most unique in our situation is we try and adapt with how the changing generations are arising. So how a business owner of the past 40 or 50 years might run their operations works great for their generation. It worked great for their time, but obviously just as life goes, business goes the same way where it's ever changing. So some of our young techniques that we try and adapt to our business, like I mentioned, probably a million times different than how somebody else who's been doing it for a while operates theirs. But at the same time, we kind of mold it to who's going to be buying our products, and that's the younger generation, the rising generation.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about your model and your products, so people understand the context a little bit.
Yeah, if I can kind of run free rein here for a second, I want to talk a little bit about the ideation behind the idea, and then what the idea actually was, and kind of take it from there, so people can kind of dissect it a little bit.
Good idea.
If you're good with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my co-founder and I, we were in this college program. It's called Sandbox. It's growing. I think we're on their 6th campus that is growing. Hopefully it'll be nationwide over the next couple of years. Most amazing program that any college could ever offer. The basic premise of it is, rather than going into your typical classroom setting where the teacher lectures for an hour to an hour and a half, you take tests, you do your typical study notes and flashcards and projects and whatnot. The entire point of Sandbox is to start a tech company while getting college credit. So instead of going to those regular classes, you work on a tech company, and based upon kind of standards they set at the beginning of the program of how well the tech company goes, that's your grade in the class, that's your experience, that's everything. So we still had classes, we still had mentors come in and teach us, but it wasn't the traditional setting. They weren't actual professors. Usually it was just local business folk who have started their own tech startup and came in to give us some advice. So when my co-founder and I started working on Interval, before we even started working on it, we went through the drawing board countless amount of times. Our first great idea that we thought was going to make us billionaires was Airbnb, but for wedding venues. So we go on and we're like, how's nobody done this yet? There's these wedding venues are pulling $6,000 to $7,000 a night just by one wedding or one big event. And we're thinking, man, there's some of these smaller ones that aren't bringing in enough customers to fill their venues. And so here we are thinking we're about to become billionaires with it. Lo and behold, no wedding venue actually wanted to jump on our platform. We made a basic MVP, started showing it to businesses, venues themselves, and nobody wanted to join because they didn't want to do profit sharing. That's a big issue Airbnb
Yeah.
faces. They're just a big name in the game and people jumped on early, so it worked out. So our original idea absolutely got shredded. And throughout the entire process of Sandbox, here we are with a new idea, a new idea, a new failure, a new failure. It just went on and on and on, as every business owner can ever attest to when they
Sure.
think they're striking gold. So eventually one day we go back to the drawing board, Connor and I, and we sit there and we're thinking, okay, we keep thinking of what's going to make us a ton of money as business owners, what's going to be the new great idea, when in reality, what we need to do is think about some of the pains that we have seen in our modern day as consumers. So after talking over a couple different issues and whatnot, and I make it sound like it's a very short process. This was months and months leading up to
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
One day we're talking though, and we say, okay, one issue that both of us have talked about that we face inside of our lives is number one, we both hate waiting on hold. So if you call into any type of business and they say before you can even get a word out, they go, hey, can I put you on a brief hold? Boom, elevator music already going. It's annoying. Nobody likes it. The second issue, which is even worse than waiting on hold, is when you're calling into a business and nobody answers the phone or your text or any communication to begin with. And I always thought that was hilarious because here I am as a customer. I'm literally trying to give you my money, say, please, Mr. Business, take my money because I want to use your product, your software, whatever it is. And yet you won't reply to me. I'm in this exact situation right now. It's hilarious. I'm trying to use a piece of software from this other company. Luckily, they're pretty different compared to all the competitors out there. So they still have me right where they want me. I'm still probably going to end up buying it. But I've messaged them 4 times in the past 3 days, and they have not responded to a single one of my messages. And it just amazed me.
Wow.
Here I am. I'm trying to give them thousands of dollars to use their software, and they won't reply to a potential customer. So, long story short, after all this ideation, we knew we wanted to solve that kind of issue where some of these smaller businesses, they might be short staffed, they might not be able to reply to their customers quick enough, but they have an issue and we want to come in there and solve it where we answer basic questions that customers might have, schedule appointments and do anything that a normal human receptionist could do over the phone and text. So that's what we built.
Yeah. Now it adds the context that I was looking for because there's so much to be gained by utilizing technology to our advantage. And yet it seems like we're divided into two camps, people who run from it and want to do things the old way because they think that the old way is safer, is like better. But we all, and then the other people that want to use technology to, make our lives better and don't, and they get that technology is something we do. Technology isn't like a robot from another planet or some kind of creature that comes to destroy us and take over. It is whatever we use it for. Now, are there bad actors and are there risks? Yeah, of course. But technology is largely a tool depending on how we use it. I like the get over yourself thing. So tell me where that came from, where get over yourself came from.
Yeah, so get over yourself. It's been a project of mine. It'll be a life pursuit of mine. My goal is to continue podcasting and consulting for the entirety of my life. It really started back when I was in middle school, actually. It started off as more of a joke than anything that was life-changing or changed my mindset and anyone ever whoever listens to my show. So there's a fun game I like to play. So Hirsch, you can help me out with this one. If you could think back to middle school days, if you see a typical middle schooler, what are some of their bigger concerns that they have in life?
Well, and I still have kids that are young enough to be in the thick of that. I think concerns are clothes, friends, keeping up with friends in terms of the things that they think are important and want to do, and having to get these things done immediately, having the immediate gratification of problems being solved. So those are a few.
Yeah, no, those are good. You have one that I always share on my list. Clothes is a new one. I haven't heard that one too often, but I think you're right though. As I look at some of my younger cousins and my nieces and nephews who are a little bit younger in their middle school ages, I feel like they are more worried about that. I was never worried about that, but maybe with the younger
Yeah.
generation they are. But
I don't
so the
think it's,
ones,
by the way, Brandon, not to interrupt you, but I don't think it's generational. I think it's just, it depends on
maybe it depends. Yeah, there you
the
go.
phase they're in, but anyway, go ahead with what
Yeah.
you're saying.
So you hit the friends one. They're always concerned about their friends, what they're going to be doing, make sure they're kind of in a social queue. The other three I like sharing are they want to make sure they have good grades. For the most part, every middle school kid wants to like impress their teacher, get a good grade on the test. You never want to be the kid in middle school who did bad on the test. You're embarrassed by the B or the
Yeah.
C or the D,
Yeah.
whatever grade you get. So that's another one, another fun one. You're always worried about if your crush likes you back or not, right? All the middle school kids, you're constantly
Oh yeah.
worried about
Yeah.
how good your hair looks for your crush, if you caught the ball at recess, so your crush might have been watching, right? That's a big concern. And then the last one I always have on my list is sporting events, making sure you did good in your sporting event for that upcoming
Oh
night.
man. Yeah, for sure.
So I say all these with a caveat saying that in middle school, for the most part, obviously there's other circumstances in life that might bring in a little bit more heat into the conversation. But for the most part in life, a lot of middle schoolers don't have any crazy issues that they have to deal with. Their life is pretty straightforward. So back in middle school, I remember I would have these friends who would do bad on that test. Their crush didn't like them back. They played horrible in the sporting event, whatever situation it may be. And they would think it was the end of the world at such a young age. And back then, I was doing it more just to rub them the wrong way and just mess around with them a little bit. But I remember when they'd go through these situations, when they'd fail that test, when they'd have that bad sporting event, whenever they'd come to me and they would act all sad or frustrated or whatever, as a joke, I'd look at them and I'd say, you're fine. Get over yourself. You're
Yeah.
okay. That's not the end of the world. Get over yourself. So what started off originally as me just kind of being a punk to some of my friends. After a few years, it developed where it became more of a motto and a life mindset that I used inside of my life. Rather than me telling my friends constantly as a joke, hey, get over yourself, I started asking in my internal perspective, how can I get over myself? And so I realized that in life, there's so many issues that we have day in and day out. Hirsch, you go through things I will never fully understand. I'll go through things you'll never fully understand. We all go through things inside of our life. Some are more grand schemes, some are a lot smaller. But at the end of the day, how we accept those difficulties and how we accept those trials inside of our life is going to determine our entire outlook, how much we can accomplish, who we're going to be, what kind of person we want the world to see us as. And if we can take aside all these hardships and say, no matter what God is throwing at me today, no matter what lesson he wants me to learn right now, I'm going to step back. I'm going to get over myself and recognize that it's not the end of the world. And it's very difficult. There's definitely situations where it feels like that. But if you can just step back and say, you know what? It's not all about me 24/7. I could step back, recognize it's going to be okay, and get over myself.
Yeah, and you know what? It's deceptively simple and deceptively deep at the same time, Brandon. And it's funny that you kind of cop to the fact that when you started with that as a catchphrase, as a kind of a retort, it didn't really mean that much to you. It revealed something of your personality, and I think you bring that to bear in your endeavors today. But definitely, it just started simply enough, and it is simple, but it's so hard for us to get out of our own way, to get over ourselves. If someone is really trying to help somebody else and they're passionate about it and they're really, that they can be as loud as they want, and somehow the sincerity of wanting to help somebody else will take the edge off of it and make them more credible. When they're just trying to be seen, to serve themselves, to get attention, whatever our hangups do, they make us small. They're petty. As soon as somebody gets over that, they start to be heard, they start to be seen, they start to be listened to. And I think that's in there in what you're doing, is that thing of, get over yourself, being like, dude, it's not all about you. And even if it is something you're struggling with, someone else is struggling with it too. So why not put them first and focus on helping them? And yeah, you will reap the benefit as well.
Absolutely. I'm a firm believer, and I'm no scientist. I'm not going to back this up with any medical research. There are studies that have kind of confirmed what I'm going to be saying here, but there is plenty of people who sit there and they wallow in their own self-pity. A lot of times it's very granted. They went through something difficult. Life threw them a curveball and they weren't able to hit it at the moment. A lot of times what people are going through is 100% legit. But the issue with it is if they sit there and just focus on their inner self and focus on, okay, these are my difficulties, these are my struggles. Yes, I might see one of my friends going through something very similar or completely different from me, but it's hard for them too. But let's focus on my issues, my problems. The issue with that is everyone is the main character in their movie or their life story. And so if we all are focusing on ourselves as a main character, if we don't set aside our time and our feelings to help somebody else be the main character of their show, we're always going to be focused on our inner self. And overall, this is the point I'm trying to make is I am a personal believer that the best way you can fight any kind of sadness, depression, anxiety, anything crazy inside of your life, the best way to fight against any of it is to go out and serve somebody else. Recognize that somebody else is going through something difficult. Recognize you might actually have it better than somebody you might be around. Recognize that, hey, just because I had an issue that I was going through this week, this person goes through that day in and day out. They've been dealing with it for years. So if you could take
Mhm.
yourself out of the perspective for just 5 minutes and go and serve somebody else who's going through, even if it's something completely unrelated, I promise you, your situation isn't going to look as horrible.
Yeah. Amen, man. And you know what? You know what's also funny? When we get hurt, if we stub our toe, if something happens, we have pain. We could have serious pain. Whatever it is, when we're doing something else, we get distracted. We get distracted from it. So we don't feel it. Now, some people are
So
real
true.
brave. Some people are real brave, and when they get injured, whether they're an athlete or a warrior, it doesn't matter. But they fight through the pain and they go and they distract themselves with their mission. But this functions totally the same way on emotional levels. You know, heartbreak, like you talked about middle schoolers, friends and judgment and trying to keep up and trying, you know, and for sure a lot of us as we get into our 30s and 40s start to be so competitive that we're like middle schoolers. We have to do this, we have to have that, and we have to again, we could take the attention off of ourselves for a little bit and get a breather. You know, it's not even like it has to be permanent. And that comes from something you said as well, which is just take a breather and take your eye off of yourself, even for a moment, to help somebody else, and it'll make you feel better.
Definitely. And there's obviously caveats in there. There's going to be times in life where you will definitely need somebody more than they need you at that point. But I think the main theory that I'm trying to, or the point I'm trying to get across is it's not going to be like that 24/7. At certain points, you're going to be the one who needs to take the help, and that's 100% acceptable. But for the most part, there's going to be people around you who are going through their points in life where they need the help 100% of the time. So if you can just kind of do some internal reflections and recognize, hey, what I just went through, yeah, it sucked, but you know what? I'm going to buoy myself up and I'm going to go serve somebody else. I promise you, you're going to feel better. Whatever situation you're going through is going to seem lighter and you will feel happier.
Yeah, and a little balance. A little balance won't hurt either. Let's talk for a second about interval, and because that's very niche, in terms of a virtual receptionist, an AI receptionist for automotive businesses, right? Talk a little
Yeah.
about that and how you came to that.
Yeah. So, kind of the process I described to you when we were going through that whole situation of hating waiting on hold and not getting answers to our phone
Right,
calls and
right.
whatnot. So, we went back to the drawing board and we said, okay, this is what we want to do. We want to make some kind of virtual receptionist that answers common questions, that can schedule appointments, just basically step in there for customers when businesses are unable to due to staffing shortages or whatever kind of situation they might be in. Maybe they're just super busy. And so when we started making it, we were kind of all over the place. We have some medical groups signed up, we had commercial cleaning services, we had some automotive businesses. And the reason why we started targeting automotive to begin with specifically is we heard this crazy, crazy statistic where it said 73% of all first time customers inside the automotive repair space. So, Hirsch, if you were looking for an auto shop, you're new to an area, or you didn't like your old shop, whatever it may be, you'll look on Google Maps. It's usually within 5 to 10 miles that you're willing to travel to go to a shop. 73% of these first time customers, they either call into the business or text. If the business doesn't answer their phone call on the first try or doesn't respond to their message within the first 5 minutes, the customer will choose to take their business somewhere else.
Gone. Yeah.
And so, yeah, they're gone. They're gone. And so, with this crazy statistic we learned, we said, okay, so what's the math behind that? If most of these businesses are losing out on these customers, It was northward of $4,000 a month in revenue for a mid-sized shop, not the massive ones, not the super small ones, just for a basic shop you would see on the side of the road when you're driving down into the city or wherever you're going. Those are the shops that are missing out on around $4,000 a month. So we took a step back and we said, whoa, we can capture a lot more revenue for these guys. And that's what we've been doing since.
May feel like a little bit of an abrupt segue, but listening to you talk, I'll tell you how I got here. Listening to you talk about business and talk about life and talk about being young, I I'm curious what you see out there amongst your peers, your peer group, people your age, that demographic. And of course, there's many demos within that. But what are you seeing your generation being like and feeling?
If you would have asked me this a year ago, I probably would have responded very differently. If anyone can't tell by listening to who I am, I'm the type of person that's kind of blunt to the point, likes getting a lot of work done, straightforward,
Yeah.
go, go, go mentality. Over the past year, so I've been married for a year now. My wife and I actually just celebrated our 1 year wedding anniversary 3 days ago. And
Wow,
so
right. Congrats.
hey, thank you, thank you. So before I was married, I would have looked at a lot of the people I was surrounding myself with, not necessarily my friends or acquaintances, but just people of my age group or my demographic, like you called us. And I would have been scared for where we were headed. There's so many things you see on the news. The younger generation is rising up against blah, blah, blah. They're having social concerns over blah, blah, blah. You see everything on social media, and half the time I just look at them and I say, what are you thinking when I see some people my age and what they're doing? That's what I would have responded with last year. Over the past year, though, I've learned something that my wife has taught me amazingly, which is a sense of compassion. Before last year, I don't think, and I'm still working on it. This is not a toot my own horn situation whatsoever. I still suck at it, to be
Yeah.
completely honest. But having compassion is something my wife has been teaching me. I've been learning this lesson where a lot of times in my head, if I set myself a goal, I'm going to do it at all costs. No matter what, I'm going to accomplish that goal. My wife is the a little bit different where she has leniency and she recognizes it's more of a lifelong pursuit. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And so one day I was trying to encourage her. I said, okay, you had a goal to, I think it was something dumb like don't eat candy for a month or something. My wife and I, we love our candy. And so she had a goal of not eating candy for a month. And she slipped up one day. And I remember I called her out for it. And she basically just bit into me, not in a rude way. She's a very soft-spoken girl, but she just says, not everyone could be as disciplined as you, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
And so what I've been learning to cut this story off before it gets 30 minutes long here, what I've been learning over the past year is to look at people kind of how Christ would. Christ, whether you're a believer or not, you know the stories, looked at everyone with compassion and love. He sought the best in every single person. And I recognize as humans that is incredibly difficult to do. As much as we say we shouldn't judge a book by or a cover by its story, what's the phrase we're using there?
Don't
Help me
judge a
out
book
here.
by its cover.
Don't thank you. Yeah.
Right.
Don't judge a book by its covers. As much as we're told that growing up and in our lives, frankly, nobody ever listens to that. You see somebody and immediately your first thoughts are what you picture on the outside appearance. So if now you're asking me, and I'm not perfect at this, but over the next couple years, as I get better and better, and I look at everyone around me who's my age, I look at them with just hope that they're going to try and do the best for their family, hope that they're going to do what they think is right, hope that they're going to do what they think is right for the country, for their spiritual life, for their physical life. I might not agree with them all the time, but at the end of the day, I can have compassion and think to myself that they're trying to do what they think is best.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And the icing on that would be if we all try that, then we're all giving one another the benefit of the doubt. We're all showing compassion to one another, and you can't really go wrong. And yeah, we get beat up sometimes, right? We show compassion to somebody and they're not ready to show compassion to us. But I'm so glad we kind of circled around to this note because it is it probably has always been what we need, what we needed more than anything. It's like we could say now more than ever. It's one of the phrases I hate because now more than ever suggests that we really know what's been going on forever, and we really don't. We just know that what I think is that at some point in our lives, each of us comes to the realization that we need compassion and we need
Hmm.
love. I like to give the guest the last word, and you've shared a lot of great stuff even in this short time. But is there a message that you would like to share beyond what we've already covered, that is that here's how I'll frame it, that you think will inspire the listener and help them in life and business?
Definitely. And I'm Mr. Cliche today. I've been dropping a lot of words that everyone's heard 1,000 times, but sometimes we need these daily reminders. If I could share one final piece of advice to anyone out there who's listening, be that business related, be that physical, spiritual, whatever kind of area in your life you're trying to improve right now, my goal for you, or my encouragement to you, is to just get started. And I know, once again, that is a cliche phrase. Just get started. It'll all be okay. And I want to give a little bit of framework behind that. So growing up, I was a Boy Scout. I got my Eagle Scout. And so if anyone knows the typical Boy Scout motto, it's be prepared. So my entire life, I was taught, be prepared. I remember before going on any campouts or any hikes or anything like that, our troop leaders would lay out everything we had in our bags to make sure we had the proper equipment. We'd have the perfect amount of water, food we needed, anything that we needed to, do good on the hike, camp out, whatever it was. And so my entire life growing up was, how could I be the most possible prepared for this situation? So my goal or challenge for all of you today is to stop actually worrying about how prepared you are. In life, we often prepare ourselves too much past the point where it becomes procrastination. And so my challenge for all of you is to say, just get started. If you're working on a business, I'm not saying you shouldn't go out and do market validation and research and see if anyone will actually pay for the product or service you're working on. Of course, do a little due diligence and jump in. But don't sit there and twiddle your fingers long enough where you say, okay, I need to check this off the list, check this off the list, check this off the list before I actually get started. If it's your physical journey, maybe you're battling through an injury. Maybe you hurt your shoulder a few months ago and you're still striving to fix it up before you can get back out there and start working out again. Don't let that become procrastination. Get out there and start fixing it now. So whatever it may be, don't do the Boy Scout motto. Just get started today. Stop preparing too much.
Thanks so much for tuning into Truth Tastes Funny. If you enjoyed the experience, please leave a 5-star review and share this podcast with your friends.